So let's start this abbreviated SportsMax Zone with track and field. The nominees have been finalized for the upcoming Athletics Association of Guyana election, slated for the 16th of March. That's actually Sunday at the annual general meeting. 7 candidates are set to challenge the embattled incumbent Aubrey Hudson when the AGM is hosted for the first time since 2021. Joining us to assess the slate of candidates and the current climate of the AAG is Guyanese journalist Roll Tony. Roll, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Great to have you on the show to follow up on this story, which we had been tracking, of course. And I remember James Cole, the Gensec, telling us that he believed that there were several personalities that would probably be, putting themselves or putting their hats in the ring for candidacy. And it's turned out that he is right. 8 candidates. History making this, isn't it, Roll? Why so many?
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for having me, Lance. Always a pleasure to be here. History making in every sense of the word, because I don't ever recall we have us having this much candidates for the AAG election. And quite interestingly, I totally understand the enthusiasm from those who are contesting the position of president and why they would want to be involved in the AAG's election this time around, for sure.
Yeah, could you expand on that? Because I remember Aubrey Hudson, when we spoke to him, suggested that he would not, if nominated and if encouraged by the delegates, he would not rule out going for a 4th term.
And rightfully so, because, just like any election race, you just can't say that, hey, I want to be president and I'm the president. You have to first be nominated. And then, people have to find confidence in you to run the association or whatever you're contesting. Interestingly, Mr. Hudson has always had the confidence of the clubs. The last election, Mr. Hudson and Ms. Amanda Ermenstein, who would have acted in his capacity while he was quote-unquote suspended, they went down to the wire, vote for vote, and then I'm not sure what agreement was brokered. She ended up being the vice president and he remained as the president. Now, this time around, though, what I would have found, because of the development of what's happening in track and field, allegedly the AAG should be signing a major deal with Adidas, should be signing or would have signed a major deal with Adidas that will give them some resources that they've never had in the history of the association. So I understand the reasons behind a number of people contesting. So the only person I'm unfamiliar with is Trevor Gonzalez. I would have reached out to a couple of people, even those who are contesting, and no one seems to be aware of him. But I do notice you have some coaches there as well too. Colonel Roberts would have served under Hudson. Now Roberts would have served 2 terms under Hudson. Kenny Shedley was a committee member. She's a coach. Mark Scott would have served under Hudson in some capacity or the other. He is the coach of Tiana Springer, one of our brightest, or probably our brightest prospect here in Guyana. And then you have Ariane Mangar with an extensive background in sport. In fact, she's Dr. Mangar. She leads a fraction of the rehabilitation center there under the Ministry of Health. She also worked as a physiotherapist for Cricket West Indies. She served both the Guyana Cricket Board as well and Cricket West Indies in those capacities. And she most recently served as the vice chair of the AAG's financial committee. So she's well aware of the undertakings of the AAG. And in fact, she's a sports enthusiast through and through, even though most of our work would have been done in the field of cricket. She would have revolutionized physiotherapy here in Guyana, and more so would have worked closely with associations and athletes and so forth. So my anticipation is that Ms. Mangar, Dr. Mangar rather, would be one of the front runners there, along with Mr. Hudson, of course, and also Ms. Amanda Hermenstein, who would have done a phenomenal job in leading the association in the past year or the months that Mr. Hudson was on the suspension.
Yeah, Roll, I wanted to specifically discuss something with us, because I am aware that the Ministry of Sport, the government, and the Guyana Olympic Association, based on their current stance, are not likely to be in favor of Hudson returning. He had, run afoul of some of their principles in the past, which partially led to him being suspended from his position. But because he has been nominated, it's pretty clear that there are factions or sectors of the track and field fraternity in Guyana that would still support him. Would you think that the GOA and the governments not being impressed with him could factor in his chances?
Look, no one was really impressed with the work of Mr. Hudson over the past year or so, especially leading up to the fiasco. To be honest with you, a lot of things that we would have seen continued under Mr. Hudson where track and field is concerned he would have inherited from the past. So we didn't see much change. And I think what brought the spotlight to Mr. Hudson and under his administration of the AAG is how well our young athletes and even some of our senior athletes would have done. Emmanuel Archibald won our first gold in CAC 100. He also won our first medal in the 100 meter at the Pan Am Games as well too. And so because those athletes have been doing so well, it opened up much of the shortcomings of the association because everyone started to complain. And then the fiasco with our Caribbean game teams that was unforgettable. And we saw the ministry stepping in a major way. And you would have seen some changes thereafter, whereas the Ministry of Sport, which it should have been that way before, would have taken control of funding the Caribbean Games team and ensuring that everything is in line with them. So yes, you're absolutely right. Word of the street is, and based on my information, that they're not too pleased with Mr. Hudson. Very good gentleman, if I might add, but some shortcoming administratively where the AAG is concerned. They would have seen the support given to Ms. Hermanstein, and as I mentioned, everything started to fall into place with Adidas under her, and now they should be heading into a multi-million-dollar deal allegedly with Adidas as well. So the AAG is primed to be in a position that they've never been before. So this election is extremely important on all fronts, including the relationship that they currently have with the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, National Sports Commission, and the Ghana Olympic Association.
Yeah, and you made some really, really valuable points just now, speaking about Mr. Hudson and, not being favored based on so many different things that happened. But you hit a key point when you spoke about the performance, because one of the things I've noticed being in sport is that you can do anything, but once you get the results, people tend to forget sometimes the things that happen behind the scenes, and they remember the pride and the joy that they felt when their country did well.
Right.
Do you think that would triumph whatever happened? I mean, the things that happened out of the field and all of that.
Look, you're absolutely right. Usually, when a team does well, the administration gets a pass, even though they might be bad. But this time around, though, because everyone understands what's at stake. So Tiana Springer is undoubtedly, she's back-to-back gold medalist at the Caribbean Games. She's Commonwealth Youth Games gold medalist. She would have went undefeated in Guyana for years, winning senior championships. So she is up next. So everyone is looking at her as the next Shawnee Miller from the Caribbean, as the next, you name it, in the 400, 200 meters, primarily in the 400. Like, she's up next. And then you have the likes of Malachi, Austin there as well, too. And then over the years, we saw a number of athletes really getting scholarships and leaving Guyana, heading off to prime universities and even receiving NIL deals. So people are like, no, we can't afford to have bad administration at this point in time. And then over the past couple of years, you would have seen an increase in good relationship with the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, and by extension, the government of Guyana, something that didn't quite exist in the past for where athletics is concerned. Because to be fair to Mr. Hudson, the AAG had used to struggle to get funding from government back in the day. Recently, when things would have changed following the last election and this administration came into play, the Ministry of Culture and Sport under Mr. Ramson, Charles Ramson Jr., would have seen that shift in good relationship with all associations happening across the board. A little could be improved, but to be fair to Mr. Hudson, he didn't have. But now they can't afford to have mishaps like he would have had for the Caribbean game because much is at stakes, and we're seeing more and more athletes coming through the woodworks now.
Yeah, and from listening to you just now, and again, I always say like a captain, and then you have the vice captain, you have the president, and you have the vice president. And most times, I always say that vice president role or that vice captaincy role. Sometimes, you know, you don't really get to see these people at the forefront because they're always kind of behind the scenes leading the charge. Now, Miss Hermanstein, she got the opportunity to step up because of the suspension, and I'm saying that in quotation marks because when we spoke to Aubrey, it appeared differently. So she, let's just say, she got the opportunity for a short period of time. Can you tell us a bit more, apart from, you know, you said something just now about things started working and, you know, some sort of structure and all of that. But can we get a bit more about her just to get a better understanding, I mean, based on your point of view, of course, what she is like and working with her?
Yeah. Well, in terms of leadership, she served in the Guyana Police Force in a leadership position, I think, as a deputy superintendent. If I could be corrected, I stand corrected, but I think she was a deputy superintendent in the Guyana Police Force, and she served there for years. She would have changed the way in which track and field. She definitely brought a breath of fresh air to track and field in Guyana. You're not used to seeing a lot of women leaders in sport, if I might add. So I could count on one hand, with fingers to spare, how many sports associations are led by women. And I mean led by women. And especially being what the Ministry of Culture and Sport here characterizes it as a core sport, or one of the top sports in Guyana, that isn't led by a female. She's done fairly well in the absence of Mr. Hudson. A little bit here and there. I wouldn't say that she received the full support of the AAG, but I'll just leave it at that. But she would have done extremely well. Some might say that she needs to be a little bit more stern in leadership where track and field is concerned, as compared to being a part of the Guyana Police Force. But she would have brought about some significant, some noticeable changes to the AAG, like a stronger relationship with government, getting more from them as well, more funding especially, and also we will see in this entire deal that the AAG will have with Adidas really come into fruit under her. They seem a little bit more comfortable working with her at the helm of it as well. So it will be interesting. If I might add, at the last election, she did receive some votes. So the votes were split between her and Mr. Hudson only, and they went around for several rounds until they would have made somewhat of a decision that her and Mr. Hudson came to, and then that's how he became the president once again, because they were voting on and on and on. So she does have support from some of the clubs in Guyana.
Yeah, in the past,
from a lot of the clubs actually.
Yeah, in the past decade, Raul, we've seen women presidents of track and field associations in the Caribbean. Donna Rayner from Bermuda, Esther Maynard from Barbados. They had served in recent times as presidents of their association. And I listened to the points that you were making earlier on, and I do get the impression that Dr. Mangar and Hermanstein are pretty solid candidates and would be among the favorites to take over this job. And as you suggested, giving again a sporting landscape a rare situation of a woman being in a leadership role.
No, in fact, Lance, none of the top disciplines.
Yeah, just some audio issues there with Raul Tony as he addresses the question I just put to him, Mariah, about the possibility of a woman taking over track and field administration in Guyana. Raul, are you back with us? We had some audio issues a few seconds ago.
I will tell you that none of the core sports in Guyana are led by females, and we have seen globally this paradigm shift to have more female leadership, but in the Caribbean, you don't find leaders, women leaders coming forward to challenge for position in sport, especially in some of the top sporting disciplines across the region, football, specifically basketball, track and field, rugby, and those disciplines. Here in Guyana, it would be interesting to see if Ms. Hermanstein would be given a chance to lead the association for the next 4 years. Ms. Mangar Dr. Mangar has a very impressive resume, and that in sport as well too. In fact, she's a lecturer and at the university here as well too, and her work is in sport also. and as well as Ms. Hermenstein for almost practically all her life, because she served also there for the police force track and field team as well. And she hasn't done bad on the tenure she had the AAG. So for me personally, I would like to see what she would do with full 4 years at the helm of the AAG, as well as Dr. Mangar. But you're absolutely right. You know, we're not, and this is across the board. So somehow in the region, we're not quite ready for female leadership in sport. I'm not sure what's the reason behind it, but we don't see a lot of women given that opportunity to lead sporting federations and associations, and I should say core sports within the Caribbean, and Guyana is no different.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've got your pulse on this story for several months now, Raul. And I would like to end this interview by asking you, in Sunday's election, who do you think will win?
I would not see past Mr. Hudson being re-elected, given the tone or the temperature here in Guyana and how things have been with track and field. I would not see past Mr. Hudson being elected. Like I said, he's a good person, you know, someone you could call in to have a conversation at any time, no matter how critical you are of him. And that says a lot about him as a person and as a leader as well. And he does mean well for the sport. Honestly, he does mean well for the sport. But he just had a few bad years. And to be fair to Mr. Hudson, some of the support that we've seen given to the last, well, in his absence, the administration running the sport, he never quite enjoyed, you know, the funding, having to scrunch to find money to send crafty games teams and these teams here and there. He never quite had that amount of support. But we've seen what Ms. Hermenstein would have done with that support as well. So I wouldn't see past Mr. Hudson. Dr. Mangar is a very strong candidate as well too. Interestingly, I see 4 coaches there, and Kenisha Headley, Niall Stanton, Colonel Roberts, who would have served the tenure under the AAG as well too, Mark Scott. And it will be interesting to see how things pan out, because their clubs are actually voting in the election. So it'll be interesting to see how they pan out. But I see it as a three-person race between Dr. Mangar, Ms. Hermenstein, and Mr. Hudson.
Okay, well, Raul, we'll be tracking the story for sure. So when the election is held on Sunday, I think we would have a discussion on Monday's SportsMax Zone, reviewing what happened on Sunday. But thanks for putting the story in perspective, and we'll be in touch.
You're more welcome.
Yeah, Raul Totney there, likely to be covering the election on Sunday, the Guyana Athletic Association. And let's have a quick look at those candidates against the incumbent Aubrey Hudson, Cornel Rose, Mark Scott, Amanda Hermenstein, Ariane Mangar, that's Dr. Ariane Mangar, Trevor Gonzalez, Kenisha Headley, and Ninal Stanton. So those are the candidates for the presidency of the Athletic Association of Guyana. And an interesting discussion quickly, Mariah, on the possibility of a woman becoming president, and the fact that there are a growing number of women administrators in the region. St. Lucia's track and field also being led by a woman, and the Barbados Olympic Association and the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, both led by women as well. So this is a sign that things are opening up for the women who are strong administrators. I've seen them perform, and we'll see who wins on Sunday for Guyana's track and field. Yeah,
you know, I think very soon we will no longer be having that discussion about women getting the positions, because I feel like our capabilities, you know, continue to prove themselves, and it will just be that, guess what? Dora is the head of the election, you know, election committee and all of that, because I feel like more and more lands, you know, women have assumed these roles and they've really been bringing it. Yeah, so that's the story coming from Guyana, the AAG coming up on Sunday. We go to break. We'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.